Ukraine's president has claimed the world narrowly avoided a radiation disaster at Europe's largest nuclear plant, which is occupied by Russian forces. Power to all the reactors at the Zaporizhzhia complex in Ukraine has now been restored. But for several hours on Thursday, electricity needed for cooling was cut off, apparently by fire damage to overhead cables. Ukraine's state-run nuclear company says all 6 reactors at the site remain disconnected from the country's electricity grid, so they cannot send power out, but there are currently no issues with machinery or safety systems there. International inspectors have demanded they be allowed to visit, as Gareth Barlow reports.
Zaporizhzhia, Europe's biggest nuclear power plant, the current focal point of the war. On Wednesday, for the first time in its history, the plant was cut off from Ukraine's energy grid after fires triggered by the conflict damaged power cables, leaving experts to warn of the implications and threats to the plant's and planet's safety.
Nuclear power plants require off-site power to function safely, to cool the reactor, to cool the spent fuel there. Any cutoff of that power could potentially cause an enormous crisis at the facility.
Zaporizhzhia was taken over by Russia in March early in the war, and Moscow has controlled the site, still run by Ukrainian workers ever since. On Thursday, in his nightly address, President Zelensky called on Russia to withdraw.
I want to assure all Ukrainians we are doing everything to prevent an emergency scenario. International pressure is needed that will force the occupiers to immediately withdraw from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The IAEA and other international organisations must act faster. Every minute the Russian military stays at the nuclear plant risks a global radiation disaster.
Connections between Zaporizhzhia and the rest of the grid have been re-established, and both sides accuse the other for tensions in the vicinity since the invasion, leading the international community to call for de-escalation around the plant. To get a full understanding of the situation and to protect its safety, all sides agree a UN-backed International Atomic Energy Agency inspection should take place.
All the time we are in contact with the national Ukrainian regulators, with the Ukrainian operators, and of course with Russia, because Russia is in control. I was yesterday in Istanbul, for example, negotiating with the Russian side on the conditions of the visit.
The IAEA chief, Rafael Grossi, says he'll personally lead a delegation which it's hoped will take place in the coming days. Until then, all Ukraine and the wider world can hope is that Zaporizhzhia functions as normal and that Thursday's dangerous situation isn't repeated. Gareth Barlow, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Hugo Bachega's in Kiev, and he told me how serious the situation is at the plant.
Yeah, Karen, for weeks we've been talking about tensions around this nuclear facility, tensions that have raised fears of a nuclear disaster. And yesterday, a very strong statement from President Zelensky, who described the situation as being one step away from a radiation disaster. Now, for weeks we've been talking about tensions there, Russia and Ukraine trading accusations of who is to blame for shelling this complex. The Ukrainians have accused the Russians of essentially turning this nuclear facility into a military base, using it to launch attacks against Ukrainian towns, perhaps knowing that Ukrainian forces are unlikely to retaliate. Now, the Russians reject those accusations. They say Russian troops are there protecting the plant. Now, last week, the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, was here in Ukraine, and he told me that it was essential to create a demilitarized zone around this facility, a proposal that's been rejected by the Russians. But he also said it was essential to allow international inspectors into the Zaporizhzhia complex. Now, it seems that talks are happening to give access to international monitors. We heard from Rafael Grossi, the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog agency, saying that a visit could happen within days, but the terms of this mission are still being negotiated.
Hugo Bachega, satellite images suggest Russia is burning off large amounts of natural gas at a facility near its border with Finland. This satellite image of the Portovaya installation shows the size of the flare from above. Now, the image has been colorized to highlight the flames. This picture was taken from the ground. On the right, above the trees, that's the sun. On the left, you can see the orange glare and the haze from the gas being burnt off. And this photo was taken on the 24th of July from a distance of about 38 kilometres. Again, it shows the flame burning. It's believed to have begun in June. Gas industry experts have told the BBC that the flaring is unlikely to be accidental. It may reflect concerns that closing the gas facility could cause long-term technical issues, or it could simply be the challenge of dealing with the large volume of gas being supplied previously via the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Western Europe. The cost of the burning northwest of St. Petersburg is an estimated $10 million of natural gas every day being burnt off. And scientists have raised concerns that the large volumes of carbon dioxide and soot being created could exacerbate the melting of ice in the Arctic. President Putin has signed a decree to increase Russia's army by 10% to around 2 million. Just over half the total personnel will be soldiers, though it's not clear if the numbers will be boosted through volunteers or broader conscription. While no official death tolls are available, Russian forces have suffered heavy losses as a result of the war in Ukraine. The increase is due to come into effect from January.